The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for part 2 in our Infor XA 4-part web series. Today presenting, we have Rick Altenau. Rick is our guide, I would say our Infor expert in-house. He has been working with the product probably longer than he would like me to say, so I'll leave that out. And we also have Carlos Velas, who I butchered your last name regardless. And Carlos also has been working with the product probably longer than he wants me to say. So rest assured you're in good hands of knowledgeable experts. During the presentation, all lines will be muted, so we ask that you use the chat function there, and all questions will be answered at the end. With that, Rick, go ahead.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Today we are going to basically do a very quick overview of Birst and talk then about the XA Birst interface, which we refer to as ATx, and how we can almost instantaneously activate the interface into Birst from any IDF ERP. So Infor has a number of tools that allows us to do this, but it would be supporting XA, LX, and System 21. So all of those things are available, but today we're going to be talking about XA. So first of all, business intelligence, something we've been talking about, listening about for years. Why do I need it? What is it? Basically, the XA database, the ERP database, is extremely detailed. You can see every transaction as far back in history as you want to go. If you want to see a sale transaction that took place against this part number 14 years ago on a Tuesday in October, you can look that up. All the details there. That works great when you're looking at detail. So as the screen shows, you can get all the detail that you want to see. But what happens if you want to see summary information? What happens, for instance, if you'd like to see seasonality of product in a graph? That data doesn't exist. I can see all the transactions. I can see all the sale transactions of a part or a family of parts. But if I print that out, put it into Excel, do whatever I want to do with it, it's hundreds of lines of detail. The summary doesn't exist. And that's one of the things that we do in order to get information, especially to our executives. So what do? We have all this information in XA. We can look at all these detail screens, all the inventory histories, the sales history, the cost history, whatever we want to see, that all exists in XA. But when somebody wants a report, what do? We download data to Excel, we summarize it in an executive summary file, an Excel file, and then we put a graph across it. We have just manually created a business intelligence dashboard. All it is summarizing data in a format that we want to see, putting a graph across it. So the problem is with that, it's tremendously time consuming. It takes a great deal of IT time. You've got to download data. You got to verify what data you're downloading. You got to make sure you have the right cost fields, the right sales fields. Anybody that's out there that's looked at our database understands that it's quite robust, but it also means that you can pull incorrect data. Step in Birst. What is business intelligence? Business intelligence is a tool that allows you to summarize those databases and get the information that you need as quickly as possible and automate it. So once I know what metrics I want to have, I want the system to go get it, bring it down, and give me a graph. I want to be able to look at this information every day, maybe every hour. I want to have contact for it on my cell phone. I want to have an app. I want to know the status of my business, the status of my backlog, the status of my inventory. It's not just sales, it's any database function across the system, and I want it on my availability. If I'm looking at a dashboard, the idea of a dashboard is to be able to glance at something, say everything's looking good, and move on. The name dashboard comes from driving in your car. You're going down the road at 60 miles an hour, you glance down, you see your speed, the oil pressure's okay, none of your warning lights are on, life's good, you go back to driving. Only if you see something that's flagged, you say, wait a minute, got to find out what's going on here. Maybe you stop, maybe you get more information, but one way or another, the dashboard is the indicator. You then want to be able to take that information and drill into the next level. So Birst is a next generation business intelligence system. There have been BI systems out there for years. They have typically been $1 million implementations. They were not functions that small to mid-sized manufacturers were interested in investing in. It simply took too much time and too much effort. Birst now takes away the requirement of summarizing all that data and creating that source so you can go right to the graph. But we still need to get to the data. That's the key thing. So Birst is providing that ERP executive summary. We're not, again, just looking at sales history. We can look at marketing information, inventory, finance. Again, any function in the system. One of our very first installs of Birst was for a manufacturing reporting system with the TV screens on the shop floor. They wanted interactive feedback summarized so people on the floor knew what they were doing. It's not just executive information. It's a way of summarizing and reporting that information. And so it's very quick and very easy. These are real sample Birst screens that are on your screen. Now, this all looks cool, but how is Birst supplied by Infor? When you buy it, it comes like Excel. When you buy Excel, Excel doesn't come with spreadsheets. You create the spreadsheets. So Birst is provided with the ability to read databases, excuse me, but the actual databases are not built into it. In other words, XA is not built into Birst. So you as a programmer or your programmer in your company needs to create those interfaces. So the integration is going to be the result of your knowledge of that ERP database. Guide recognized, Guide is the largest XA affiliate in the world. We have more XA customers. We recognized how powerful this tool was first. And we also recognize that there's a common requirement to integrate data. So we have introduced a tool that does just that. It's called ATx, Analytics Toolkit. The X stands for any IDF ERP. So I mentioned earlier that it can support different ERPs. So ATx is the acronym that we put together for this. Now, Birst reads more than just our database. It can read the data lake or the data vault that Infor has been promoting for the last couple years. It can read any SQL or organized structured database on any system. It can read Excel. So if you have information in Excel, you have a budget in Excel, we can read it. You can also then manually create a database into XA. That is tremendously time consuming. And that's where Guide has said, we can shortcut this for our customers. So what does Birst need to be able to read your XA data? Well, if you have ever printed out the file status listing in XA, it's over 62 pages. There are 50 or so files that look like this on every page. This is the data that Birst needs to read. Now, for instance, I just have half a dozen files here. These are all a part of the customer master, the customer order. So it is very much a part of the detail that goes into creating a database. So like I said, 60 files, 50 pages, that's 3,000 plus files that we have to worry about. That's what you would need to integrate. Now, the nice thing about this is when you go look at a customer order, you don't go look at those files. You go look at an object, right? An IDF. That object in IDF already has organized all these files. The thing about this object is it's not a data file. It is linking all the correct data files with all the correct keys. So when I open up the customer order, it might actually be opening up 50 files, linking all those different files together and showing me the information I want to need. Well, it would be great if I could use these objects in Birst, because Infor has done already the work for us in creating the IDF. The problem is Birst cannot read this data. It needs to read this data. So somehow or another, we had to take this logic that already exists and be able to apply it to Birst. That is introducing ATx. That's what we've done. Analytics Toolkit for the IDF ERPs. So let's talk about what it does, and then I'm going to turn this over to Carlos so you can see the result. First, what is ATx? ATx is an interface from XA to Birst. It is what links all those objects together. So the IDF has already created the rules around the data structures, around the metadata, etc. All those buzzwords that we don't really care about as managers and executives. They already exist in the logic of the program. ATx is going to read those rules that Infor has created and link them then directly, the files that created those objects, into Birst. So that's what ATx does. What does that mean? Well, ATx creates that executive or summary database. You want to look at all customer shipments. You don't want to know what files they were in, if there was partial shipped or whatever those functions were. You want to have a summary of all customer shipments. That summary is created by ATx. It's called a star schema. Not a word you ever have to worry about again in your life, but that's the technical word of how those links are created. So what is a star schema? It is the definition of those links. Now, the thing about this, if you are using XA properly and you use Enterprise Integrator and you use System Link and all those functions that are out there, you may have added your own files. You may have added your own fields to the ERP database. We are reading your IDF, not the generic IDF from Infor. ATx reads your IDF to create the star schema. What that means is this interface automatically includes all your personalizations. You have no work to do whatsoever in order to link those things together. You're going to be able to sit down with Birst and start creating dashboards and not worrying about where that data comes from or how to link it. That is a huge statement. So what does it look like visually? I'm a visual person. I like to put up pictures because this tells me something. So what I did is I went into the system. I asked our technical guys to go into the system. Danny is one of the people that wrote this, work with him very closely. I said, show me all the purchasing objects. And these dots represent files in the system. So those are all the purchasing objects. So this is in ATx. I asked, how do I see the files in ATx of what XA is? Show me purchasing. These are what they showed me. I said, well, how do they connect to each other? So he showed me the connections between those files. So, of course, this is just graphical. It's showing you an idea. But let me take that a little bit closer and zoom in on one of these so we can see what we're doing here. It is actually looking at the objects, the file names. And it knows that this object talks to this object. It put the links together already. All those gray lines are linking these things together. So in this particular case, I can look at a vendor and I get all their information you need to know about a vendor. In fact, I zoomed in on a vendor. And here are the objects that a vendor talks to. Now, each of those objects might consist of another 10 files. But this is what ATx creates. Let me give you another example. COM order is a little bit more complicated than purchase orders. So we have more objects when we're looking at customer order objects. Well, what happens and how do they connect? It gets busier and busier. Now, rather than go through a whole bunch of examples, I'm just going to go to the ultimate example. Show me XA. That is every, you can't even see the dots on it, they're so small. That is every object in XA and how it links to every other object. Literally, this is man years to create if you had to create it yourself. And every customer would have to create this. Let's zoom in on this and see what it looks like. Again, I take a little tiny section of it. And even at that, boy, I'd have to zoom in on this to be able to see it. There's a lot of data that goes into here. And for anybody who's done work in creating the star schema for any system in the past, recognizes this statement that literally this is man years. We run it in a couple hours overnight. That's what ATx does, and it creates this interface. So with ATx, I can take this IDF information and turn it into graphs in a week or less. After you run ATx, you are creating dashboards the first week you have this product. Now, the thing to remember about this, it's not limited to XA. In fact, if you have multiple XA environments, you can link each one into Birst. Birst does the data consolidation. We're showing you here how XA can feed ATx into Birst, but all these other data sources are all available. It can all feed into the system. It can all create those Birst summary executives, those executive summaries. So if you have information that, and I used the example a minute ago about a financial budget. Not every company puts the financial budget in their general ledger. Maybe it's in Excel. I can read it in Excel, link it to my general ledger via account number, and put it into Birst. So as you're looking at this, and you want to see a demo of ATx, really difficult to do. When you're at home and you turn on water, or you plug your vacuum cleaner into a wall socket, you expect to get electricity, you expect to get water, hopefully not at the same time from the same outlet. That was a joke. I know everybody's muted and my jokes aren't that good, but we have to pretend. And so as we're looking at this, I'm showing the schema here of plumbing. If you don't have the plumbing in your house, you turn on a faucet, you don't get water. Birst is your water. The plumbing is ATx. You will never need to go into ATx and look at it. It provides you the data. So with that being said, what does ATx mean to you? It means you turn that into this. And notice, not limited to your computer. We've got a pad, we've got a phone, all the tools work. So that's my introduction. What is Birst? Business intelligence. What is ATx? It's the connection points between your database and Birst. With that being said, we're going to turn this over to Carlos. He's going to show you actual graphs. Along with creating those databases, we did create several core dashboards that would be included with ATx. So when you install it, you're going to be looking at your data immediately. Now, these are standard dashboards. You will have complete flexibility to create anything that you want, but you will be able to open it up and see things immediately. So with that, Elsa, you can turn this over to Carlos, and we will look at actual product.
All right, Carlos, you are live.
Hey, hello everyone. I'm Carlos Velas. I'm a consulting manager for Guide Technologies. I'm going to step you through a few things just to add some a little bit more detail to what the ATx tool does. Then I'm going to take the results of that ATx creation and actually build out some of a simple dashboard at this point due to time. And then I'll step through some of the dashboards that we've created from that database that you automatically get with the purchase of ATx. So for all of you who are familiar with PowerLink, we typically have a screen that are in view and subset type of information that we all have become very familiar with. And as we have become familiar with the field names and the content associated with different business objects, we kind of know where the information is stored. So if I take a look at item warehouse, for example, we have items, the warehouse, vendors or default vendors, a standard cost, quantity on hand, typical information that most XA customers are very familiar with. Behind the scenes, we also have a enterprise integrator where business objects actually are built and designed. And one of the key things that we know about when we identify a business object is that we give it a name of item class, or I should say business class, and we utilize that to manage the information that will ultimately get into Birst. So in this case here, I'm going to open this one up. And some of the key elements that we look at is all the different attributes that are available within the business object. And as Rick mentioned, we have a large amount of relationships that have been created that tell us how this business object will react to other pieces of information. We know that the item warehouse is tied to CO line items. We know that there's MRP reorder recommendations. We know that there's scheduled receipts. All this information has already been pre-linked. And as Rick also mentioned, we also have like this monthly usage, which happens to be a user-defined business object that we've also included as part of the item warehouse. All this information's got indexes, it's got attributes that are added to the process. It really gives us a rounded view of information that we need to track by the item warehouse level. So when I take a look at the attributes, it gives us what we call the star schema trifecta. And in that scenario, it gives us the column lengths, which is very important. It gives us what the data types are. So it's either alpha, it's numeric, it's binary. So we know that the data type that constitutes the information. And we also are able to grab the attribute name. But when we've started through this process, we had to make sure that the names became unique. So in a scenario where I have, let's say, warehouse spelled out as part of this business object, it could have been house in another one. It could have been identified as a different value like WHID because they didn't want to spell it out somewhere else. Or it could have that the same field name was used for a different purpose in a different area. So we had to go through and make sure that everything had a level of uniqueness so that we could meet the star schema trifecta requirements that are necessary anytime you build out a BI tool. So what the ATx process does, it goes out and builds this very large model. And the model is, I'm bringing up everything that we actually put into it. And right now it constitutes 157 different business objects that have been pulled in. And depending on what it is that you are looking for, you could actually break it down into all those different business objects associated with sales. So there's 101 and you get these values, but depending on if I wanted to go after country information, it tells you all the relationships that are available based on a country selection. It'll actually highlight all the different elements around the box telling you exactly what is happening. Or you can go the other route and select specifically a value, and it will bring up the relationships as you click on these throughout. So we have taken the time to make sure that when you install ATx, it's building a model that has built all the relationships for EPDM, for purchasing, for item master information, for manufacturing, for finance, sales, inventory, and planning information. So it's not that you're just getting a sales cube or you're getting a finance cube. You are getting a fully interrelated application where you can go after all pieces of information based on the keys that are associated to us through IDF. So let me step you through what Birst looks like. I've logged in already so that I could bring up the first screen. And I'm going to go into this ATx environment here just to build out a first dashboard for us. I may have to log in again. So one of the things that, if you guys recall, just a few minutes ago, I said that there was a class associated with everything. And so if I type in that same class name, all the different attributes associated with item warehouse appear as part of my dropdown. So I can actually go through and grab every single field associated with the item warehouse. And in this case here, because of the search I put in, it even brought in the item warehouse extension that was associated with the item warehouse. So all the fields are actually available to you for processing. So I'm just going to take a simple on-hand type value and all the on-hand, and I'm going to take the unit cost default version. And this is my entire unit cost default that I have got for 100 items selected. And I can go through and review the type of dashboard that I want to create with the information. I've got a couple of ways of doing that, but I can select different styles, but I'm going to keep it for now in columnar shape. I'm also, I can select out what it is, this would be considered my measure, and I want to now go after my category of what I want to take a look at. So I'm just going to go for item class. And I'm going to select out this item class ITCCF, and it gives me all the different item classes that are available to me through this process. I'm also going to go grab this and put this into the sort, and I'm going to make this from high to low so that way it shows me right at the left-hand side where it is that I have got the most sales, or I should say the most inventory on. So, and then I can go through and do additional formatting if I need to do that, and I might throw in a dollar amount or whatever it is that I feel like doing with the graph. And what I'm going to do right now is subset this down to show me only the top 10, so that way, because that's more important to me than anything else. Now, this is a very simple graph. It's all based on information that came from XA. The fields are all identified as something very similar to the naming convention used in XA. And very quickly, I have created what is considered a very simple graph. And I'm just going to go ahead and save this. Oops. And I'm going to throw this in here. So now that I've created my first graph, I'm going to go step back now and actually go into where the dashboards are, and I am actually going to start building out a dashboard for you. So these are the standard dashboards that you would typically get. I'm just going to go grab information here, go into edit mode. I'm going to pick webinar. And what I have done is I've started creating this, and I'm just going to go and grab some information that based on what it is that I've been dealing with. So over here, it allows me to insert different things. So I'm going to go after a existing report. I'm going to go into webinar, and I'm going to grab this new dashboard, and I am going to say done. Once I have selected my dashboard, I'm able to do all kinds of different things. Here, I'm going to add a new KPI. So a KPI, key performance indicator, I can go through and develop or look for information to establish a new KPI. So in this case here, I'm going to look for quantity on hand. And so I've got all these different on hands, and I'm going to take a quantity on hand from a transaction. There we go. And so this tells me the total quantity I've got. Now, this isn't something that most people would take a look at because a count of everything doesn't really mean anything. But we can go through and format this information to either be we can change it so that it has a different representation as far as units. We could specify that we don't want the decimals formatted to any way, shape, or form that we want. And then this becomes a box that we can establish on here. We can also take information when you're creating KPIs and extend the information so that you can actually go in and build a quantity on hand. I'm just going to put in on hand cost. And when you start building out what it is that you are looking for, I'm going to take my on hand again. Quantity on hand, item warehouse. And I'm going to do a times. So get standard unit cost. And when I am done with this, it gives me a total cost of inventory based on the calculation that I've produced. Now that seems kind of high, but it's basically due to our test data. But we can go through and also format this information as well. So I'm going to put 0 decimal on this and change the auto, save this, and we can move these things around. Once you've placed it, the information where it is that you want it to be displayed, you can use other buttons to format the boxes that you are working with. So for example, I can go through and put in rounded curves. I can do background shading. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with all the additional buttons that help you transform the page into something that actually fits your needs, including adding your own images, your own logos, just different types of information that that would make this a pretty dashboard. Once you are done, all you have to do is then publish it, and then the dashboard is now available for others to see. So now, going back to what we have as far as available dashboards, we have basically built quite a few dashboards that we think are compelling to a lot of different businesses. One of the things that that we have provided is when you take a look at, for example, purchasing or manufacturing, in those two areas, we have what is considered our current manufacturing files, and we also have our historical. And the same concept appears in manufacturing, where you have your current manufacturing, and you also have your historical manufacturing. And that information, you really can't get a sense for how you have been doing when you're only looking at your currents. So as part of the ATx tool, we have gone through the process of making sure that both the current and historical files are completely in unison with each other, so it all looks as one file. So you get one view of everything that you have done, whether it's been closed, whether it's been purged, whether it is open. So you have one place for all your information for either manufacturing, or one place for all your purchasing. The other problem that we have with XA is that you have current open orders for customers, and then you have all the sales history. So relating those two can become an issue as well. So the top graph actually shows you where we have our sales, which is all grouped together in blue. And we've got our back order information, which is all in the open order files. And we have no problem sticking those on the same graph and actually seeing the information side by side. So we have taken and demystified the analysis that's required internally to group information that's absolutely important. Additional graphs that you get, we've got some that are very specific to sales. So when I'm taking a look at the sales side of things, we've got what I consider to be the top 10 sales. So we got top 10 by year-end customer, or top 10 by rep, or top 10 by sales class. So we've got information that is all basically top 10 that you guys, if you get this, you can always go and grab and modify it and make it top 25, or if you don't like the images that we're presenting, you can always change it to a different type of graph. But you get a good starting point for top 10 type information. We've also got just typical sales information based on, in this case here, we've got geo maps, so you can drill into information for specifically like the US. You have the capability of expanding any graph and taking a look at detail. So here we got sales in the US as well as other outlier locations around the world where sales have been performed. And so very nice set of tools to get started with. And then just a regular sales overview type dashboard that gives you a wall of numbers, that gives you a very good idea of where your backlog is, what your sales are, what your month over year is. So it's pretty powerful tools that you can get some use out of almost immediately. On the inventory side, we have, once again, mostly a wall of numbers where we have a lot of information that's available to you by either demand and supply or by warehouse. And so I'm thinking that most customers can find a different type of, or I should say one of these types of dashboards that would actually meet their needs. And if you go through and grab information and select out using the filters that we've already got, it will give you information based on what you can do within a specific warehouse. And you start seeing filters appear at the top left-hand side as far as what you've selected. If I go back to the top 10, for example, no, let me take that back. Let me go back to the sales line. If I go through this one here, we've also got different selections that we've provided, so you can go through and grab specific entries, and it would come back and return if one I've selected actually had some information. It would come back with details associated with what I've selected. So it's we've added filtering capabilities that can be followed by anyone just to make sure that you have a starting point with filtering of information as you go through this. Additional dashboards, I'm going to go and skip over purchasing and go right into AM finances. For customers that have specific needs associated with needing to have a trial balance or financial statements, we've actually provided dashboards that give us in detail a lot of information associated with how their accounts, sub-accounts are all set up and what the balances are associated with it. So you can go through and select out different customers, and it would change the numbers as you're selecting through. If you've got different header information, you can go to the ones that's selected, and it will change the numbers to reflect the header descriptions in the financial statements report to just bring you up that information. So we've got quite a bit of work already done for generating very quickly some financial statements without having to actually go through and look for additional software to do what you're looking for. Trial balance, once again, mostly report-like with a lot of selection criteria, very powerful, and out of the box, you are going to be getting quite a bit of information that typically would require additional levels of software for you to purchase to get to this level. So on that note, I think I can turn this back to Rick.
Yep, I will pass it over to him. There we go, Rick, your screen's back on.
Absolutely. I just want to summarize very quickly one thing that Carlos just showed you, but I want you to point out the fact that he sat down and created a dashboard in the first 5 minutes of this webinar. So I went through the logic of what Birst is and what ATx is, and he started from scratch using the ATx data, this star schema that is created from ATx, in a matter of minutes created a dashboard, a bar graph. And the reason I emphasize that so much is that's how fast this product will be beneficial for you. You can start using your data immediately. Now, of course, you can make those graphs prettier. You can do all sorts of shadowing and do all sorts of things to make it look very cool. But the point was how quickly he was able to get results. So we're 45 minutes into this. We have time at the end if there are any questions. And we'll open this up to the floor, and one of the two of us will see what we can answer.
Okay, we did have one question that came through during the presentation. The question is, can Birst connect to other ERPs such as Dynamics or SAP? My company has several.
Elsa, I've lost you. Elsa, say that again.
Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Can Birst connect to other ERPs such as Dynamics or SAP?
Birst will work with any of those ERPs. Yes. Birst is a state-of-the-art system that can read any database, any of those functions, and create immediate needs. Now, the ATx product is written around Infor's IDF ERPs. But Birst, out of the box, if you have 2 XA environments and you had an LX environment and you had a Microsoft environment, we can read that database, but you would have to build your star schema into that database. Maybe we were just that good, Elsa. No questions.
We are looking to move forward to Infor LN. Do you have a similar product for Infor LN?
I'm sorry, Elsa, you're still breaking up. I'm trying.
I think it was a question regarding, is there something similar for LN?
LN, again, is not an IDF product. There are other organizations within the Infor family that may be working on an LN interface. We have experimented with interfaces into CSI, Sightline, into LN, into a number of different resources. Guide would be very willing to work with you if you were interested in creating that interface. But at this point in time, yes, it talks to LN, but the interface still needs, the star schema still needs to be created.
Okay. If I create a financial statement and want to export to Excel, how is the data exported?
Also, I believe you said if you create a financial report to Excel, can we read that Excel report?
Yep, the data exported.
If the question was if I create this and can I export it, we do have capabilities of exporting information to different formats. So we can export as PDF or data to Excel.
Okay. Reading through here.
Hoping that was the question because it's you're breaking up again, Elsa.
I apologize. I don't know what is going on with my microphone here. It was working well all day.
Carlos and I are both available. If you send us emails either through Elsa or directly, we would be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have, or if you think about this after the fact. If you would like to show this to your company, to whether it's executives or your team, and would like a personal demo, we can set that up also. So we are available to do whatever it takes to make sure that you understand this process. We also have more technical consultants that can actually drill into the detail and talk to other techies. I am not the person to do that, but we have the people that have that knowledge. So if there's somebody that has that desire to get into development, we can also talk about how those interfaces work.
Yeah, one thing that I don't know if I was very clear on is we bring this in at a very unsummarized level. To pretty much, let's say, at a sales level, you are getting down to the line item level of that sales order. And then everything summarizes back up from there. So that if you need a summarization of all line items at the item class level, or if you need it to the customer level, or you need it to a ship location, you can, it summarizes everything back up, but the detail that actually gets into Birst via the ATx model and subsequent SQL calls is at a very granular level.
Okay, guys, I'm back here. And with our last 10 minutes, we'll try to run through a couple of these questions, if that's all right, Rick and Carlos.
Very good.
You've got, does ATx directly interface so the data is in real time?
It can. What we are showing is examples of both. You have the ability to schedule downloads overnight, to build data in Birst that is stagnant and refreshed on a block basis. That way you don't have to do the interactive work and be sending tons of data over the net at all times. For instance, if you're looking at a manufacturing order status on your shop floor, well, the item warehouse information, the costing information, maybe I download that and keep it in an item master object in Birst, and I do that once a day. But then I can have direct feeds into XA and download the current status of the order. So you have control over whether you are doing this interactively, whether you're doing it in batch or a mixture of both.
Okay. Then along those lines, can you drill back to detail from the dashboard in ATx?
Carlos, the answer is yes.
Yeah, the answer is yes. Like as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we actually bring in the information at a very granular level. At this point here, our dashboards are somewhat summarized, but the information that if we drill down to a lower level, it would be more detailed. So we can go to the granular level within the dashboards.
Okay. This question is around Birst and the cloud. So it states, it is my understanding that Birst in the cloud can only interact with on-premise XA information through the data lake, which is populated through ION. How would your tool ATx fit into this situation?
I believe your understanding of how that would work would be incorrect. We can go directly to the database, whether it's in the cloud, whether your XA is in the cloud or on-prem. Now, Birst is in the cloud. Birst is actually doing this analysis and doing the work in the cloud, but your data can be in any location. So by putting Birst in the cloud, what it's able to do is it ties into Infor's tech stack, which is going to be going into artificial intelligence, and will be able to give you additional tools to analyze your data and find interpretive answers that you don't necessarily see. In order to do that, it has the ability, if you turn it on and interface and secure and all that kind of stuff, to actually connect to a cloud and an artificial intelligence and a larger database. Infor connects to the data lake, to Birst as a connection. So the premise of the question that something had to be on-prem is not true.
Okay, next question. What kind of support do you offer? Is it email, WebEx type, and is it included in the maintenance fees for ATx?
Our support is Guide Technologies is independent of Infor. So we sell our services. We include some support hours, help implementation and training hours as a part of the sale of Birst. But we have a team that is able, if you want, we can do your dashboard development, we can get into your data, we can actually create all these tools for you. Now, you would own the results of all of that. But if you don't have the resource now and you'd like to buy those resources, Guide Technologies is ready and able to be able to sell you those resources to help build that information that you want to see. We can also support you any way you want. But to start out with, we're planning on training your people to know how to create those dashboards using the ATx star schema. Carlos, if you want to expand on that, that's fine. If I said well enough, I'm good.
Yeah, I don't know if from one standpoint, I think I heard part of the question was about data lake. I am not sure about how data lake in the cloud operates or interoperates with Birst in the cloud. I'm not sure how exactly that operates. So if the question is you know, can we take, if we have Birst in the cloud and we have data lake in the cloud and we're trying to use Birst to go to data lake, that I think needs to be a question for Infor, because we don't take that same approach. We do not populate data lake. We can extract information from data lake if there's a connector to it, but we come directly from XA into Birst.
Okay. Last question again. Will this product you demoed work with Birst Cloud Suite?
Yes.
Birst is in the cloud. So I'm going to say yes. I'm not sure what Birst Cloud Suite. Our product goes against the XA database, the IDF database, and creates that star schema into Birst. If you could clarify that question, we might be able to answer it better, but the answer, I believe, is yes.
Okay, we can follow up with that question further. And as Rick mentioned, please do not hesitate to reach out if any of your questions did not get answered, or I may have read them incorrectly, so they did not get correctly answered. Very likely. With that, not seeing anything else come through. I would ask you all to save the date for part 3 of our 4-part series on September 17th. That will also be presented by Rick, and it is about tailoring XA, time to take another look. Anything else? We'll wrap up and give you a couple more minutes of your day back. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.